It looks like artists get in the way of the sounds. Move out of the way of the music. Don't write the music, please. Michael Jackson did more than just play music. He was a star from the time he was a kid musician and led the Jackson 5 to the time he became the king of pop. It was clear that Jackson had an impact on society, music, and dance. Even though he was famous, rich, and loved, his personal life was full of scandal and rumors. I sleep with all of them. Kids Macaulay Culkin used to sleep on this side, right next to Kieran Culkin. It made the bed too crowded. When everyone woke up on June 25, 2009, they heard the terrible news that Michael Jackson had died. He was fine. His sudden death broke the hearts of millions of fans, and people started to wonder what caused his premature death. His autopsy report just came out with some shocking new information that answers a lot of these questions. We will talk about them in this video. To do that, we need to know what took place that day, the day Michael Jackson died. The world was about to lose one of its most famous artists on June 25, 2009. Jackson was getting ready for a huge comeback tour while living at his mansion in Holmby Hills, Los Angeles. It was supposed to be the beginning of a new part of his life, but it ended his amazing journey. Jackson was meant to be resting at home with his personal doctor, Dr. Conrad Murray, taking care of him in the hours before he died. Jackson had been having trouble sleeping for a long time and was taking a lot of medicine to help him. Things did not go as planned on this day. A panic 911 call came from Jackson's house at 12:22 p.m. The caller, who was on Jackson's security team, said there was a man who was in trouble, not breathing, and needed help right away. Someone asked for help, but they didn't say who it was. You could hear Dr. Murray trying to do CPR in the background, but it was clear that things weren't going well. The emergency workers got there quickly, but Jackson wasn't responding to their efforts. He was rushed to the nearby Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, where doctors worked for more than an hour to bring him back to life. As the news spread, everyone held their breath. Not long after 2:26 p.m., it was proven that Michael Jackson had clearly died. It wasn't long before the breaking news spread around the world and fans gathered outside the hospital, shocked that their beloved king of pop had died. Initial reports said that Jackson suddenly passed out, but there are still questions about how someone so young and healthy could do it. While people were sad, stories and guesses began to spread. Some said it was because he was practicing so hard for the upcoming tour, while others said it was because he was known to abuse prescription drugs. What really happened to Michael Jackson that tragically ended his life would be clear after the autopsy, not just gossip. Jackson's autopsy was done by Dr. Thomas Noguchi, a well-known forensic doctor who works on high-profile cases. His team carefully looked over Jackson's body, which was important not only for figuring out how the pop star died, but also for showing how healthy she was in general. We didn't know much about him in the days before he died because he was so private. He needed to look more closely at everything that was going on at the time. A lot of tests were done as part of the process, including toxicology tests and checks on important organs. He had to look everywhere in this place. According to the autopsy report, Michael Jackson died right away from being too high on propofol. Propofol is a strong tranquilizer that is usually only used in surgery and shouldn't be used at home. It was said in the report that Jackson had a lot more propofol in his body than is normally thought to be safe for medicinal use, indicating that he got it not long before he died. But how could someone who has trouble sleeping get such a strong sleep aid? The truth. Propofol is mostly used to put people to sleep and keep them asleep during treatments. It is well known in the medical world for how quickly it works and how short its effects last. This makes it a great choice for surgical procedures. It's only really used in hospitals, though. In the case of Michael Jackson, however, propofol was used to help him sleep, especially while he was practicing for his This Is It tour. Jackson turned to Dr. Conrad Murray for help because he was having trouble sleeping and with the stress of his job. This made him dependent on this strong anesthetic. The autopsy report also showed that Jackson had a mix of illegal drugs in his system when he died, which is a cause for worry. As well as propofol, lab tests showed that he was also taking benzodiazepines and diazepam for anxiety, which are often recommended for sleep problems and anxiety. When mixed with propofol, these sedatives greatly raise the chance of respiratory failure, but it doesn't stop there. The study also said that painkillers like oxycodone were found, which means Jackson also had problems with long-term pain. Michael Jackson started out taking a few painkillers and sleeping pills here and there. But as the years went by, his dependence on prescription drugs slowly got worse. He had a lot of doctors on call who took care of his health and gave him a lot of different medicines. The doctors didn't always know when to tell Jackson to stop. They told him he should cut back, but he wouldn't listen. They stopped telling him what to do, which made him more and more dependent, which is a bad thing. The fact that Jackson's health was getting worse showed how dangerous this crazy plan was. It became risky when sedatives and anesthetics were used all the time. That led to his sad death in the end. He was just doing what a lot of famous people do, using drugs to get through the day instead of dealing with his real problems. There was no way back for his doctors because they were all yes men, so they let him get to the point where there was no way back. It's clear from the analysis that Jackson wasn't doing very well in the days before he died. The last days of Michael Jackson. The autopsy on Michael Jackson showed how different he was from the man he used to be to the weak man he was when he died. Jackson's body was in terrible shape when he died at age 50. He used to be the picture of health and energy. He was only 136 pounds and 5 feet 9 inches tall, so he wasn't even close to the strong, in-control athlete the world knew from his peak. Jackson had a lot of health problems in his last days, most likely because he spent so many years traveling and performing non-stop. His body showed that it had been hurt. His joints took a lot of abuse over the course of his decades-long career and now show signs of arthritis and other degenerative diseases. The way his body was breaking down was a stark reflection of the damage his hard life had done over the years. It also makes sense that he had such a busy job. Doing gravity-defying acts for a long time is hard on the body, and if they aren't getting enough food and water, it will show. Findings about his overall health were also found during the autopsy. Jackson's skin was said to be in pretty good shape, but the exam showed signs of previous surgeries, such as several rhinoplasty and other cosmetic operations. People thought Jackson had died while getting another rhinoplasty in the days after he died, but that wasn't even close to the worst thing that was going on with him. Cardiomyopathy, a disease that affects the heart muscle and can cause heart failure, was found in the autopsy report. His heart had been under a lot of stress for a long time, which may have been made worse by the way he lived and the drugs he was taking. With all of that going on, getting ready for a tour was a bad idea. However, he was actually dealing with a number of health issues that most people had not noticed, even though he was a famous artist. We didn't see anything else either. Little things that can be hidden were also wrong. We would have seen them if we had looked more closely, though. Proof of past losses. A lot of scars and injuries were found on Michael Jackson's body during the autopsy. Many of them were caused by important events in his life, like the burn scars from the famous 1984 Pepsi commercial accident. President Ronald Reagan praised Jackson's charitable work on May 14, 1984. Specifically, he praised Jackson's support of the Ad Council's effort to stop drunk driving, which used Jackson's song Beat It in its ads. Jackson also made a name for himself in advertising. In 1983, PepsiCo paid him $5 million to be their spokesperson. The ad, which would be worth about $13 million now, was meant to get younger people interested in Pepsi and raise money for Jackson's tour. Michael even suggested that the jingle for the ad be Billie Jean, with a few small changes to the words. But on January 27, 1984, while they were shooting one of the commercials, something went wrong with the fireworks. During a staged performance scene, Michael's hair caught fire from fireworks, which burned his scalp in the 2nd degree. He got medical help for the burns and then had another rhinoplasty to get rid of the scars. Even after this happened, Michael's work kept going strong, and he became a major figure in pop culture, leaving a lasting mark on music, dance, and entertainment. Michael also gave $1.5 million of his pay to Brotman Medical Center. After that, he got a new deal with Pepsi worth $10 million. But the accidents didn't just leave him with scars, they also changed the way he thought and felt. The burn scars were very bad and could be seen most clearly on his head. They made his ongoing problems with body dysmorphia and self-image worse. Because of the stress of what happened, Jackson has had many surgeries, including skin grafts, over the years to try to fix the damage. Long-term effects of this accident went beyond scars on the body. They made him feel less like himself and made him more dependent on cosmetic treatments, like wearing wigs. Reports said that Jackson lost all of his hair permanently because of the burns. He often wore wigs to hide his bald spots because of this. In fact, the man was falling apart, but he kept going to keep up his image as a show. How being the king of pop affects your body. Michael Jackson's performances and dance moves were loved by people all over the world. He had a very demanding job, though, and it hurt his body in ways that were often not obvious. Years of hard practice, complicated choreography, and the stress of traveling led to a number of long-term injuries and pain problems that were finally found in his autopsy report. Jackson had many injuries over the years, mostly to his knees, back, and legs, which were found in the autopsy. His knees and legs hurt a lot because of how often he did his dance routines, especially his signature moves like the moonwalk and complicated footwork. There were also signs of osteoarthritis. Jackson, on the other hand, may have had some of the worst back injuries they've ever seen in a person who didn't die from him. He did the worst things to his body his whole life. He fell a few times while learning routines and hurt himself more than once, which made his injuries worse before they could get better. The story also talked about his leg injuries, which were common among performers because of how hard their jobs were. He also had broken ribs, which happens a lot when someone gets CPR for so long. Jackson kept pushing the limits of his physical skills despite these problems. He did this with unwavering passion. Even though it cost him a lot, his patience and dedication showed how dedicated he was to his work and how much of an impact he had on the world of performance. Jackson's pain not only shaped his legacy, but it also brought to light the sacrifices artists make in their quest for greatness. But there were more flaws than we could see. The hidden struggles Michael Jackson's emotional and mental health were quickly getting worse in the last few years of his life, along with his physical health. People who knew him well say that he was often under a lot of stress and had a hard time dealing with the constant attention from the media and the demands of his job. At first, he couldn't connect with anyone because he was such a big star. Then it was because he was always thinking about how to stay on top of the world. But soon, things changed in a way that no one saw coming. The molestation claims that came up during Jackson's success made him even more anxious. Especially at the start of the 2000s, Jordan Chandler, then 13 years old, accused Michael Jackson of SA. In 1993, which was the first big charge against him. Evan Chandler, Jordan's dad, sued Jackson in civil court, saying that Jackson had done inappropriate things with his son. A deal was reached in January 1994, and Jackson paid about $23 million to end the case. Even though he wasn't charged with a crime and didn't admit guilt as part of the settlement, Jackson's image and career were badly hurt by the whole thing. After the documentary Living with Michael Jackson aired in 2003, things changed. The film, which was produced by journalist Martin Bashir, showed Jackson's close relationships with young boys and included the very controversial claim that he shared his bed with them. Not long after Gavin Arvizo, another boy Jackson had brought to Neverland Ranch during his time there, also accused him of abuse. Jackson was arrested by police in November 2003 and charged with several major crimes. In early 2005, his trial started, and soon it was all anyone could talk about. Witnesses gave different stories, and some young children were sure they had been hurt. Other young boys who had spent time with Jackson, like former child star Macaulay Culkin, supported him, saying that even though he shared a bed with Jackson, he never did anything bad. The court found Jackson not guilty on June 13, 2005. But the trial made people disagree about what kind of person he was. People had different ideas about the great Michael Jackson after he was found not guilty. Jackson's mental health got worse because of all the accusations and public attention. He had a lot of problems with anxiety and paranoia, and the charges made people dislike him. These claims followed him around even after he was found not guilty. You just can't get rid of this kind of thing. The accusations against Jackson got a lot of attention from the media, which hurt his reputation and made people wonder if he could be a good dad, for him to make sure his kids have a safe home life. During the accusations, especially in the early 2000s, Jackson had custody battles in court. He fought with his ex-wife Debbie Rowe over who would have care of their two kids, Prince and Paris. After hearing all the claims, she was very worried, which makes sense from her point of view. It was hard for him to get along with his kids because of what was going on. He loved his kids very much, and being able to take care of them made him feel great. Not only because of the reports, but also because he was having a hard time with money. Michael Jackson owed over $500 million to more than 65 different creditors at the time of his death. AAG was one of them. They put together his This Is It tour, and he owed them $40 million. Michael Jackson's debt got out of hand because he spent too much and was in a lot of court cases throughout his life. Although he made a lot of money, his spending habits meant he far exceeded what he earned, allegedly overspending by $20 to $30 million at $30 million a year. He lost a lot of money because of his expensive homes, purchases, and growing court fees. He was paying more than $30 million a year in interest alone, so he had no time to catch up. As his bills grew, he used assets as collateral, like his share in music catalogs that had Beatles songs in them. It was never enough, even with these moves. In the 1990s, things got worse, and by 1998, he owed an unbelievable $140 million. This set the stage for the financial collapse that followed him into his later years. Things kept getting worse, and he was getting closer to going bankrupt before he died. He lost even more money in court fights because of the accusations against him. Jackson's estate had to deal with this huge amount of debt after he died. John Branca and John McClane, Jackson's executors, were able to renegotiate a lot of it and lower most of the creditors' claims. They also kept Jackson's main assets. The estate also had a tax dispute with the IRS, which said they owed $700 million in taxes and fines. They were able to settle that dispute in their favor. The end result was that he had almost nothing to his name. The company made a big move that paid off when it sold a piece of EMI Music Publishing to Sony for $300 million. Making this sale and other smart money choices helped the estate become more stable. But all in all, things were sad. He wasn't able to be the kind of dad he wanted to be to his kids. That's not what his kids thought, which is sad. Paris was only 11 years old at the time. She told the press, "I just want to say that since I was born, Daddy has been the best father you could ever find. I love him too." So much. This whole thing is even worse because Paris and Prince were home when Michael died. Not only that, but they could hear everything. The doctors could hear everything as they tried to bring him back to life. They were deeply devastated by the whole thing and didn't know how to move on for a long time. At this point, his brother Marlon told him, "Maybe they'll leave you alone now." Michael, things didn't go that way though. Even after 10 years, people who blamed him came after him, and it doesn't look like they'll stop. What he meant was something different, which you might not understand at first. Everyone thought he was talking about the media. Who are they? The Order of the Light, in the years before Michael Jackson's early fame. The biggest names in the business were often linked to the Illuminati. He couldn't have had the kind of worldwide success he did without help from outside sources, right? There is another side to this idea though. Some people think Michael Jackson decided not to go with them, which is what made his life turn out the way it did. In his music video for "They Don't Really Care About Us," he also seems to have directly criticized the Illuminati. This idea says that as Jackson's success grew, the Illuminati took notice, but he refused to join them. However, they did not leave him alone after that. He refused to follow through, which led to a string of scandals and false accusations meant to hurt his image. He knew he'd have to join them if things got really bad, but he wasn't going to change his mind. They also thought that the group had made threats against Jackson, which made him think of a way to get away. Jackson put out "Escape" in 1999. Some people see this song as a message about trying to get away from things that could hurt you. The music video for "They Don't Really Care About Us" from 1996, on the other hand, gets the most attention here. He sings, "Will me, thrill me, you can never kill me," in front of a wall with a single eye, and stands there. Jackson is thought to have used this moment to fight back against the Illuminati's attempts to control him. He may have been put on their hit list because he was so adamant about not giving in. First, people put him down in public. People used to love the ground he walked on, but now they don't want to see or hear anything about him. But that's not the end of this. Michael may have known all of this was going to happen and chose to get ahead of it. You can only really get away from the Illuminati if you die. Could he have planned to kill himself? Was it real at all? The much anticipated This Is It tour is often linked to the idea that Michael Jackson faked his death, and some fans are sure that it was a key part of his big escape plan. Supporters of this theory say that the time and size of the tour made it perfect for Jackson to fake his disappearance without too many people being suspicious. They think that the heavy media attention on his return to the stage with all eyes on him could have been the perfect distraction. Many people are now wondering if the tour was really just a carefully planned smokescreen for something much bigger and more complicated than anyone could have imagined. Jackson's sudden stop in a tour that was supposed to be one of the biggest in history is one of the many strange things that point to this being a real possibility. Some people even think that the stress he was under and the uncertainty about his health before the tour made him disappear without a trace. Strange things about Jackson's funeral, like the fact that he was seen all over the world, make these ideas sound more like the truth. Also, Jackson's daughter Paris has said that she thinks her father was killed by someone else and that Jackson gave her hints that this might be true. Some people think this is part of the bigger plot, that Jackson faked his own death to get away from the Illuminati and the music business. If you really look at Jackson's record cover after he died, there are messages that he may be hiding right in front of everyone, finally away from the people who wanted to bring him down. Things get worse when you read the autopsy reports, though. The Los Angeles County coroner finally ruled Michael Jackson's death a murder on August 28, 2009, saying that he died from being too high on propofol. The coroner's report said that Jackson had been given a deadly mix of sedatives, including propofol and benzodiazepines, which caused him to die suddenly. The Los Angeles Police Department started their investigation as soon as Jackson died. Even though at first they didn't think anyone was up to no good. Things changed by the end of August, though. They sent the case to prosecutors, which means that criminal charges may be coming. There were some problems with how the study was carried out, mostly with the chain of custody. Some people thought it was wrong that the Jackson family was allowed to enter the house before detectives came back to get some things. The Drug Enforcement Administration joined the investigation on July 1st, 2009, because they could keep track of authorized drugs even when doctors and patients didn't want to. To figure out what seemed to be a complicated web of prescriptions, they asked doctors who had handled Jackson for their medical records. Things got worse after that. They were there to make sure Jackson stayed healthy, and now they were at the center of the investigation. Who was in charge of this? Dr. Conrad Murray, a cardiologist from Houston, took a job offer that paid $150,000 a month to be Michael Jackson's personal doctor, This deal was made while Jackson was getting ready for his much-anticipated This Is It tour in London. The concerts were meant to help him pay off his huge debts, which supposedly reached hundreds of millions of dollars. Jackson was determined to give the tour his all because he knew it was his chance to get his finances back on track. The situation was even more difficult because despite his goals, he was already having serious health problems. Murray's job was to make sure Jackson stayed in great shape for the busy schedule that was coming up. His sleep disorder was the worst thing he had to deal with, as we talked about earlier in the film. Jackson had trouble sleeping and often begged Dr. Murray to give him strong drugs to help him sleep, according to the evidence. He specifically asked for propofol because other sedatives didn't help him settle down. If you ask for a drug that's strong, though, no doctor will give it to you, not even Michael Jackson. Prosecutors said Dr. Murray was careless when he gave out illegal, risky drugs at home to make money. Because he gave Jackson so many drugs in different kinds, they called it a pharmaceutical experiment. The defense, on the other hand, said Jackson was desperate and doing crazy things to make sure he could do his best on the tour. He told Dr. Murray the morning he died, "Just put me to sleep." Dr. Conrad Murray told the cops that Michael Jackson kept pleading with him for propofol, which Jackson called his milk. Murray said that for 2 months, he had given Jackson propofol almost every night to help him sleep. In court, Jackson's lawyers talked a lot about his kids and how they affected his decision to act again. Everyone was told that Murray wasn't careful that day. He didn't call 911 right away, but he tried CPR on his own. He also didn't keep good notes on his health. Even worse, Murray didn't even tell the people who came to help him about the propofol when they got there. Judges thought he was trying to hide the fact that he killed Jackson. His defense made it clear that doctors who don't help addicts will be held accountable, but he didn't want to talk. But Jackson was already hooked, and he couldn't stop because it was so easy for him to get drugs, and he was stressed out. As for how much Dr. Conrad Murray gave Michael Jackson to help him sleep, he said it was only 25 milligrams. He said it was a very small amount that should have put him to sleep in REM sleep, but it didn't work for long. He said it looked like Jackson woke up and used his own propofol to give himself another shot after leaving the room for a short time. He said, "I think he woke up, got his own propofol, and injected himself." He said Jackson died because it was done too quickly. Murray took a short break from Jackson for about 2 minutes. When he got back, Jackson wasn't breathing or moving. Murray tried CPR and called 911 at 12:21 p.m. Soon after, rescuers arrived, but Jackson was already dead at 2:26 a.m., even though they did everything they could. He was charged with killing by mistake in Los Angeles on February 8, 2010. He denied being guilty. He was freed after posting $75,000 bail. Soon after, the California Medical Board told him he could no longer give strong sleep aids. He spent 2 years of his 4-year term in prison before getting out in 2013. That is, unless he helped Jackson just enough to get away and Jackson is still living his best life somewhere else. What do you think? Please tell us what you think in the box below. If you liked the movie, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We'll see you soon.